Hi everyone, it's Jessica from Jessica's Journey. I'm back. I had a lupus flare up and I just wasn't feeling well. And so we're on chapter 4 of this book, so hopefully we can get through this. There's just 2 chapters left. I did not put on makeup today, so this is what I look like, El Natural. So anyway, we'll read this chapter and then it's a pretty good chapter. I read ahead, so okay, chapter 4, it begins with a verse. Even when I walk through the dark valley of death, I will not be afraid, for you are close to me. Your rod and your staff protect and comfort me. Psalms 23:4. The EMTs pronounced me dead as soon as they arrived to the scene. They start, let me start reading this over again. The EMTs pronounced me dead as soon as they arrived at the scene. They stated that I died instantly. According to their report, the collision occurred at 11:45. So they became busy with others, and it was around 1:15 before they were ready to move me. They checked for a pulse once again, and I was still dead. The state law said that they had to pronounce me dead officially before they could remove my body from the scene of the accident. Unless they declared me dead, an ambulance would have to transport my body to the hospital. The county didn't have a coroner, but I learned later that the justice of the peace could declare my body dead and they could remove my body. Ambulances had come from the prison and the county and in Huntsville, except for one. All of them had left without taking any patients. The last one was preparing to leave. For information I've pieced together, someone had arranged for an unmarked vehicle to take my body to a mortuary. That's sad. They had called for the jaws of life to get me out of the car that smashed. Because I was dead, there seemed to be no need for speed. They focused on clearing the bridge for traffic to flow again. The truck came to an angle and went right up over the top of me, and the truck smashed. My car's ceiling and dashboard came down across my legs, crushing my right leg. My left leg was shattered in 2 places between the car seat and the dashboard. My left arm went over the top of my head and was dislocated and swung backwards across the seat, and it was barely attached. The left arm had been laying in the driver's side door because I had been driving with my right hand. As I would learn later, the majority of the bones were now missing, so my lower left arm were just a piece of flesh that held my hand to the rest of my arm. It was the same with my leg. There was some tissue above my knee where I felt the blood. I still fed blood to the calf and the foot below. 4.5 inches of femur were missing and never found. Wow. The doctors have no medical explanation that I didn't lose all the blood in my body. Glass and blood had been sprayed everywhere, and all kinds of small holes in my face were embedded in glass. The steering wheel had poured over my chest. Blood seeped out of my eyes, ears, and nose. Just seeing the results of the crash, the EMTs knew that I had sustained a major head injury. When they first felt no pulse, the EMTs covered me with a waterproof tarp. They made no attempt to move me or to get me out immediately. They couldn't have anyway without the jaws of life. One thing that sped help to the scene was the 2 prison guards in the pickup truck had immediately called for emergency assistance from the prison. They examined the drivers in both cars, and both of them were uninjured, and they refused medical attention. The prisoner who drove the truck sustained no injuries. As soon as the EMTs determined he was all right, they transported him back to prison. Police halted the traffic on the bridge and they waited for the ambulance to arrive. While they waited, the traffic backed up for miles in both directions, and especially in the direction I had come from. Even with them waiting in traffic, they could have turned around, but it would have been an extra 40 or 50 miles across the lake in each direction. From the backed up traffic, Dick and Anita Onaker walked at least half a mile to the scene of the accident. Dick and Anita had both started a church in Klein, which was north of Houston. Both had spoken at the conference, and I just attended. I'm not positive we actually met there at the conference, although we might have. For years I have heard of Dick Onaker, but that conference was the first time I had seen him. On Wednesday morning, the Onakers left Twin Pines a few minutes earlier than I did by Houston standards. That January morning was extremely cold, and they sped along, and Anita was really chilled and asked if she could stop for coffee. Dick spotted a bait shop and on the right of the lake, so they pulled over. Apparently, while they were buying coffee, I drove past them. Many times afterwards, Dick would bury his hand in his head and say, "That would have been us. It should have been us. But we stopped and you drove past us and you got hit." Before the Onakers reached the bridge, the accident occurred and the traffic had started to back up. People got out of their cars and milled around, asking questions and sharing for their information. After Dick and Anita got out of their car, they asked fellow drivers what was going on. The word passed down that there was a major accident. Dick and Anita stood around for a few minutes, but nothing happened. More cars lined up behind them. Somewhere between 12:30 and 12:45, they decided to walk to the accident site. When they saw the police officer, Dick said, "I'm a minister. Is there any way that I can help? Is there anybody I can help? Is there anyone I can pray for?" The police officer shook his head. Those two cars, he said, they're a little shaken up, but they're fine. You can talk to them if you'd like. What about the other vehicle, the one with the tarp over it? The man in the red car is deceased. While Dick talked to the officer, Anita went over to the other vehicles. She barely touched the coffee and gave it to the old man. Dick would later tell it this way: "God spoke to me. You need to go pray for that man in the red car." Dick was an outstanding Baptist preacher. Praying for the dead ran counter to his theology. "I can't do that," he thought. "How can I go over there and pray for the dead man?" The rain became a light drizzle, but Dick was oblivious of his surroundings. Dick stared at the officer. knowing what he would say and it wouldn't make sense. Yet God spoke to him clearly, without a doubt, and had told him to go over there and pray for the dead man. As bizarre as it seems, Dick also had no doubt that the Holy Spirit was prompting him to that act. "I'd like to pray for the man in the red car," Dick finally said to the officer. "Like I said, he's dead. I know this sounds strange, but I want to pray for him anyway." The officer stared at him for a long time before he finally said, "Well, you know what you want to do. If that's what you want to do, go ahead, but I've got to tell you it's an awful sight. He's dead, and there's really a mess under that tarp. Blood and glass everywhere, and the body is mangled." Dick, then in his 40s, said, "I was a medic in Vietnam. So in the area of blood, that doesn't bother me." "I have to warn you," the man stopped and shrugged. "Do you want?" "I have to warn you," the man stopped, shrugged, and said, "Do you want? Do what you want. But I have to tell you that I haven't seen anybody this bad." "Thanks," Dick said as he walked along the tarp-covered car. From the pictures of the smashed-down car, it's almost impossible to believe that someone, somehow, how Dick crawled into the trunk of my Ford, and it was a hatchback, and he made it inside, and it was still covered by the tarp, which he didn't remove, so it was extremely dark inside. Dick crept in behind me, leaned over my back, and put his hand on my right shoulder. He began praying for me, and later I felt compelled to pray. I didn't know who the man was or whether he was a believer. I knew only that God told me that I needed to pray for him. As Dick prayed, he became quite emotional and broke down several times. Then he sang. Dick had an excellent voice and often sang publicly. He paused several times to sing a hymn and went back to prayer. Not only did Dick believe he was called, but he prayed quite specifically that I would be delivered from unseen injuries, meaning brain and internal damage. This sounds strange, because Dick, I knew, was dead. Not only had the police officer told him that he had checked the pulse, and he had no idea why, except God told him to. He didn't pray for the injuries he could only see. He didn't pray for just the injuries he couldn't see, only the healing internal damage. He said that he prayed the most passionate, fervent, emotional prayer of his life. As I would learn later, Dick was a highly emotional man anyway. Then he began to sing, "Oh, what peace we often forfeit. Oh, what needless pain we bear. All because we do not carry everything to God in prayer." That's a wonderful song. The only thing that I personally know for certain is the entire event that he sang the old hymn, "What a Friend We Have in Jesus," and I began to sing the hymn with him. In the first moment of consciousness, I was aware of two things. First, I was singing a different kind of singing than the tones of heaven. I heard my own voice and then became aware of someone else singing. The second thing, I was aware that someone clutched my hand. It was a strong, powerful touch, the first physical sensation I experienced with my return to earthly life. More than a year lapsed before I understood the significance of the hand clasping mine. I was in the privilege to share my story at Dick's church in Klein First Baptist a little more than a year after the accident. His wife, Anita, was there, and my own family, because I wore leg braces, 2 leg braces. 2 people had to help me walk up to the platform. I told everyone about the accident and about Dick's part of bringing me back. I believe I'm alive today because Dick prayed for me back to earth. I said the first moments of consciousness, the first 2 things that stood out was the singing, "What a Friend I Have in Jesus," and Dick's hand gripped mine and held it tight. After the morning worship, many of us went to lunch at a Chinese restaurant, and I sat across from Anita, I was sipping wonton soup and having a delightful time with the church members when there was a lull in the conversation. Anita leaned across the table and said in a low voice, "I appreciate everything you said this morning." "Thank you. There's just one thing I need to correct about what you said in your message." "Really?" Her words shocked me. I tried to be accurate as possible in everything I said. Certainly, I didn't intend to exaggerate anything. What did I say incorrect?" "You were talking about Dick getting into your car with you. Then that he prayed for you while you were holding his hand." "Yes, I remember that part very distinctly. I have a number of memory gaps, but the most things I don't remember. And most of the things I don't remember. That morning I had readily admitted that some of the information I gave was secondhand. One thing that's totally clear was Dick being in the car with me and praying with me. That's true. He did get in the car and he prayed with you." She leaned closer. "But he never held your hand. I distinctly remember him holding my hand." "That didn't happen. It was physically impossible. But I remember it so clearly. It's one of my most vivid memories." Think about it. Dick leaned over from the rear of the trunk of the back seat and put his hand on your shoulder to touch you. You were facing forward and your left arm was barely hanging together. Yes, that's true. Dick said you were slumped over the seat toward the passenger side. And I closed my eyes and visualized what she had just said and nodded. Your hand was on the floor of the passenger side of the car. Although the tarp covered the car, there was enough light to see that your hand was down there. There was no way that Dick could have reached your hand, but I sputtered. Someone was holding my hand, but it wasn't Dick. If it wasn't Dick's hand, who was it? She smiled and said, I think you know. And I put down my spoon and I stared at her for several seconds. I had no doubt whatsoever that someone had held my hand. Then I understood. Yes, I think I know too. I think I know who was holding his hand too. Do you? Thank you for coming back and listening to the chapter today, and I pray that you will be back on for chapter 5. And I ask that you have a blessed day, and if you like what you've heard, that you will subscribe and hit the subscribe button and push the little bell, and you'll get a notice whenever I have a video. And I ask that all of you be blessed. Have a great day. Thanks. Bye-bye.